Good evening, and welcome back once again to another toy review by myself. Tonight I'm going to be doing a review for the third deluxe wave for the Transformers The Last Knight series. And in this review we have Crosshairs, Strafe, and Bumblebee. New Bumblebee, not the same one from Wave 1. Drift was also a part of this wave, but he was previously released in Wave 2, so I'm not going to be covering him. If you want to see a review for Drift, go ahead and take a look at my Wave 2 review that I did a while back. A review for this wave is coming pretty late, considering I've already reviewed Cogman, who is Wave 4, and the entirety of the first wave of Studio Series, which is the successor to this line. But I've only just recently finally acquired the new Bumblebee. I've had the other members of this wave for months now, but for some reason Bumblebee was very hard to come by, but I did finally manage to get one, so figured better late than never, right? Plus there's just kind of a relative dearth of new figures to review at the moment, so hey. So if you watched my reviews before, you kind of know what the deal is. I'm going to look at each one of these figures individually, look at each of their modes, if applicable, compare them to, other versions of this mold or something similar. And with all that small talk out of the way, let's get started. All right, starting out we have Crosshairs. And this Crosshairs toy is a retool of the Age of Extinction Deluxe Crosshairs. So overall he looks very similar to his previous release. They've just kind of updated him a little bit, kind of improved the quality of the figure overall. He turns into this just gorgeous black and green sports car here. I should probably know what kind of car this is. I think looks like it's a Corvette of some kind. But yeah, it's got nice painted rims. They are snap-on, but it's okay. Windshield looks nice. It's got kind of this nice sparkle effect to it. Underneath, you can see just pretty much his whole robot mode. You got this weapon storage down here inside the arms. So yeah, it's a very nice, very sleek looking vehicle mode. I love the paint apps that they put on this thing. I like the windshield and the windows, the effects they have on that. Headlights look nice. It's a shame this isn't painted, but that's kind of the only part that I feel is really lacking paint. Oh, and then back here too. Yeah, it's definitely a Corvette. You got the taillights, so that's good. Now I'm going to go ahead and transform this guy to his robot mode. Unfortunately, I don't have the Age of Extinction toy to compare this to, so I won't be doing that tonight. Alright, here's his ever so stylish robot mode, complete with duster-like trench coat. You can see here that he has his two guns, his weapons, stored inside the trench coat. However, so much as just kind of look at these things funny, and they are prone to doing that. And that. They don't stay on well. Turns out that's a design flaw in this figure that was present in the early releases of it, where just something about the size and shape of the pegs in his little trench coat and size and shape of the hole in the guns just don't match up very well, making them very prone to pop off. This was fixed in a later run of the figure, so hopefully if you do obtain this guy, you get that version of it. Now the problem I have with this, and I don't know how widespread it is, but my copy has it really bad, is that this foot just is really, really floppy. Doesn't really stay in position. This one's fine. This one's nice and tight. So there's definitely a tolerance issue here, and I'm not sure how many people have this issue. Like I said, I don't have the original version of this toy, though I have seen it in the stores back when Age of Extinction was still current. And I remember just how lacking and how really cheap the original version of this toy was, and I feel like with the small changes they've made, especially in this trench coat area, the figure just comes out looking a lot better. Much more accurate, doesn't look like a cheap kid's toy, well, or at least looks less like a cheap kid's toy. The green on the robot mode comes off as a little plain, Could have gone with a more of a metallic sheen, honestly. He's got some pretty noticeable back kibble, which, obviously isn't movie accurate, but the movies cheat anyway. They just make parts disappear. My only major complaint with the actual, I guess, color layout of this, like the only thing that I think is a big miss, is the fact that his goggles here are completely unpainted, which does kind of cost this toy some points as far as not looking just cheap. But overall, this is a big improvement over the original run of the figure. All right, yeah, let me give him his guns here so he can look cool. There's one. There's dos. All right, there we go. What's a gunslinger without his guns, right? So yeah, this is definitely the best version of Crosshairs that we've gotten so far, and probably will ever get. So yeah, he's a pretty mixed bag. He's got some flaws, but he's also got some really nice details. So not the most highly recommended figure out of the line, but he's not a bad one, especially for being one of the deluxes in this line that reuses a mold. Speaking of reusing molds, now we've got Strafe, the final Dinobot released in this toy line. Strafe is a pure redeco of his Age of Extinction toy, done in marginally more movie accurate colors. A lot less muted than the movie, because all the Dinobots in the movies are pretty much just gray with different tints to them. Yeah, so if you had the original figure, there's nothing new to see here. He does have very obvious arms under his wings. Wings, do articulate. It's got storage for his swords down here. The heads and necks are pretty posable, pretty articulated. Excuse the background noise. It's a fan turning on. It's got his rubber tails, which are kind of just pre-bent a certain way because of how he is in the package. Got this crossbow weapon, which can attach to the back. Give him, some offensive capability, or you can just remove it if you don't want it. Yeah, he's just this two-headed alien pterodactyl thing. In my opinion, one of the better deluxe Dinobots that came out of the Age of Extinction toy line. Here is the very cool robot mode. It's got this great motif where the two beast mode heads just kind of converge to form like a chest armor. You can see he has an Autobot symbol right there in the middle of his chest, which is a nice touch. Obviously his wings are fully functional in this mode. He can wield his crossbow in his hand, or he could, wield one or two of his swords from his wingtips if you want to go all melee. Oops. One part of the transformation on this guy I do really like is how his beast mode feet kind of flip up and become his kneecaps in robot mode, giving him kind of this nice spiked armored look. My only gripe with this toy in its robot mode is the way the hands and elbows are kind of positioned, and that to be able to bend his arm upward at all, his hand is just kind of in this permanent underhanded position. There's not much articulation there, so he's always got to kind of, if he's pointing his weapons, he's got to hold them at weird angles. So something I wish they would have put a little more effort into, so that he can kind of assume more natural poses. And it's a shame that they didn't work to improve that a bit. Here's his Age of Extinction counterpart. You can see they have pretty drastically different color schemes. They're both some shade of blue overall, but the color layouts themselves are very, very different between these. As I mentioned previously, this new version for The Last Night is slightly more screen accurate as far as his colors go, but not by much. So the question of which one of these figures is the better of the two really just comes down to personal preference. I do like this new version. I like the colors on him, but I also do like the colors on the old version. So kind of torn between the two. I don't know if I really have a favorite. I will say the new one gets points for the little Autobot tampograph on his chest because this old one doesn't really have that. But yeah, nothing special, nothing new to see here. Just the same old toy and a shiny new coat of paint. Lastly, for this review, we have the newest version of Bumblebee. This one based off of his most recent, Camaro form from the Last Night film. And it does replicate that in pretty darn close detail here. Got quite a bit of paint on it, which is nice. Hubcaps aren't painted, which is a shame. They'd look much better if they were. The weapon storage is a little clunky because it's here on the side of the vehicle, just kind of out there. And one thing worth pointing out is that the weapon storage for his vehicle mode is not mentioned anywhere on the instructions. In fact, I actually had to go online and kind of look it up to figure out where this thing was supposed to go because I was convinced that it plugged in somewhere, and it does. This little tab here plugs into that slot, like so. So you can have him, hold on to his weapon if you want to. Underside, nothing special. There's a Bumblebee staring back at you. And for comparison's sake, here he is with Studio Series Bumblebee, which, funny enough, I've already reviewed, even though it came out well after this one. You can see there's a big size difference between these two. This is based off of Bumblebee's original 70s Camaro appearance, and this is his brand new, possibly concept car, if I remember right. I'm not sure. The interesting thing is that Studio Series Bumblebee is touted as being a retool of the Last Night Bumblebee, which I thought was true until I finally had both of these in hand. And now I would very much not use the term retool to describe the Studio Series figure. If anything, he's close to just a little bit of part sharing because, believe it or not, the vast majority of the parts in that figure, even the ones that look almost identical, are completely different parts, most of them being smaller because he was shrunk down a little bit to scale with the other Studio Series figures. Another thing to just point out is that his weapon storage is on the back, so they redid that much too to give him a little less conspicuous weapon storage. All right, now I'm going to take a moment, go ahead, transform these guys to robot mode, and show you what that looks like. And here's Bee's robot mode. This mode is very nicely detailed. See a lot of sculpting went into this, a lot of paint. There's his foot flopping around. We'll get to that. Has full range of motion, good articulation, all that stuff. Head moves up and down, left, right. Waist moves. Everything's either basically ball joints or mushroom joints, so it's nice. He does store his little weapon on the back there by his butt. And the weapon can be attached. And on this figure, it attaches to his left arm here. Now, one thing I really don't like about this is that to attach it, you actually have to pop this thing out of its mushroom joint. Like, no kidding. You're supposed to dislocate a joint on this figure to do this. See, there's the little connector piece there. Just use some force, get that guy in there. This is not fun. I don't like this. I will tell you that this bit right here is my least favorite thing about this figure. It's requiring you to put excessive force on this thing. And it's also just a pain in the butt to do. It's not fun. All right, there he is with the cannon attached. His arm actually comes off looking rather stubby because of it. But it's there. It's fully usable. Looks good. His arm can fold up a little bit and be placed in that little peg hole where his gun goes guy's butt. So it could just go in there. And it actually limits his leg articulation a bit less than the gun did when it was back there. All right, so yeah, it's a good looking figure. It's got an interesting transformation. It's pretty darn screen accurate. Yeah, looks nice overall. The flopping feet thing I mentioned, his feet tend to come untabbed from these little slots very, very easily. So any amount of fiddling will pretty much do it. So something to be on the lookout for. It's very annoying when you're trying to pose this thing and he starts flopping. And here we have his Studio Series counterpart. You can see that the Studio Series figure is almost a head smaller than the Last Night. And like I was saying earlier, it really isn't a retool. If you look closely, you can see just how different all these parts are. Even though they all look very similar to each other, almost all of them are in fact different. I think the only ones that I'm positive are the same are like these upper leg assemblies here. And I think honestly that's about it. Everything else is a different part, whether it's similar or not. Even the head, which pretty much looks identical, but this head is actually a little bit smaller. So it's very interesting. Big differences between these, aside from just the different parts used. Much of the transformation and engineering is the same. However, the lower leg assemblies and transformation are pretty radically different between the two. And also how the weapon attaches is very different. Whereas his weapon attaches to his right arm by actually disassembling the joint, his weapon attaches to the other arm. And instead of popping the mushroom joint out, just unplugs and plugs in here, which extends the length of the cannon a little bit, so makes it look a bit more proportional than his does. Doesn't look quite as stubby. So yeah, these are both really good figures. Each one kind of has its pros and cons. Personally, I like the size of the Last Night Bumblebee more, even though Studio Series may scale with other Deluxes better. I feel like he just feels too small, whereas this toy feels about just right for a Deluxe. Personally, if you're trying to say which one of these should I pick up, I'd say pick up both of them. Get the 70s Camaro one, get the brand new Camaro one. They complement each other pretty well, even if they're not the exact same size. But, don't want to lose too much focus here. This is about the Last Night toy, so let's go ahead, bring back the other two, and I'll give my final thoughts on these three figures. And here they are again, all three new figures in the third wave of the Deluxe class for this line. It's a fun little assortment of characters. One thing worth noting is that they're all Autobots, so there's not much diversity of faction here. They're all good guys. And between the three of them, you have one redeco, one retool, and then one entirely new mold. So that's interesting. I would say overall the Bumblebee is definitely the most impressive, and I'm sure that has a lot to do with him just being the newest figure that has, access to the most recent engineering. He does have some quality control issues though, and those will vary in severity depending on your copy. I have heard a rumor that they may possibly be offering a re-QC'd version in like part of Wave 4, maybe. Though I don't know I really doubt that Wave's ever going to reach the States, so I wouldn't hold my breath for it. This one from the third wave is hard enough to find as it is. But anyway, I do really like Crosshairs. I think he's a very interesting, unique looking character. I love the whole duster motif he's got going on. Strafe is good. He's cool looking. Again, I'm just not crazy about how his arms are designed and how they can only kind of bend inwards or just hold his weapons in weird angles. Bumblebee's definitely the best one. If you can get over his fiddliness a little bit, he has a fun transformation. He's got great articulation, awesome amount of detail to him. And I gotta say, I'm getting really annoyed with Hasbro because they're making me give these Bumblebee toys a lot of praise, and I really don't like Bumblebee. But I figure, if it's kind of their flagship character for the series, they would put more effort into his toys, right? So, kind of makes sense. But anywho, this wave is pretty hard to find here in the U.S. Different parts of the world, not so much. I'm sure these things are probably shelf forming like crazy over in like the UK, but here they're hard to find. In fact, as of right now, Targets and the WalMarts and all that, they all have the Studio Series figures up. They didn't even get these in, so you're gonna have a tough time finding them most likely if you live in the same country as me. I would definitely pick up the Bumblebee and probably even the Crosshairs because he is a big improvement over the old one. Strafe is by no means a necessity. If you like his color scheme more, want something a little more accurate to his on-screen appearance, or if you just don't have Strafe and this might be easier to find, go for it. But anyway, that's what I think of these figures. Sorry the review's coming so late into their life. This video probably won't get very many views because I'm sure a lot of people that were interested in these already have checked them out elsewhere. But, I wanted to give them their time in the spotlight. And that's where I'm going to end this review. So I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to leave any comments about these toys down below. Let me know what you think of them. Do you think they're worth tracking down and possibly paying some extra money for to obtain? I always love hearing from you guys. Stay tuned for my next review because the next one coming up is going to be pretty exciting for me. I'll give you a little hint as to what's coming here. Alright, but with all that out of the way, I'm going to cut the review off here. Again, hope you all enjoyed it, and I will see you all next time.